Hi everybody!
In my last video, I discussed what I thought was next for Sucker Punch Productions, the company behind both Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotai. Since I've been alive, there has always been an interest in samurai-centric video games. But I would say we didn't really get a universally acclaimed one until 2020's Ghost of Tsushima. But then I realized, the 2020s have kind of been the rise of samurai in gaming. So I kind of want to discuss how we got here. When I was a kid and a teenager, there would always be the odd game that had a samurai in it, but they either had supernatural elements or just weren't all that good, meaning they failed to capture an audience who was looking for something different, something more grounded and realistic. While it still has some larger-than-life elements, Ghost of Tsushima managed to find the right blend of cinematic wow factor and grounded realism. Giving gamers wanted that realism, they finally found a title that was covering their exact needs. There have been some other notable releases since then, to varying degrees of realism, ranging from the first Nioh sequel to Rise of the Ronin last year. Basically, in rather quick succession, we've had a handful of games all focused on the same niche, and it's showing that samurai video games actually do have a market, so let's explore why this niche is starting to blow up in gaming. So the reason this genre is growing is rather nuanced, but if I had to simplify it, it's because there's a certain romanticization of samurai. Largely, this is due to the idea of samurai being honorable warriors who are essentially incorruptible, when in reality, their code of honor, otherwise known as Bushido, only came about during the Edo period, lasting from around 1603 through 1868. But this romantic notion is fertile ground from which to build a game, since it's effectively a power fantasy and one that isn't focused on so much, at least when it comes to Western media. Samurai-based media is far more popular within Asia, just like cowboy films were huge for the longest time in the West. Also, speaking of Westerns, if you look at Sergio Leone's The Man with No Name trilogy, you'll actually see he was inspired by Akira Kurosawa's films. In fact, he got in a bit of trouble, since A Fistful of Dollars was effectively a reskinning of Kurosawa's 1961 film called Yojimbo. Why is this relevant to samurai video games though? Because Sucker Punch themselves admitted they wanted to pay homage to Kurosawa with Ghost of Tsushima. But when you get down to it, samurai are a lot like cowboys, so it all makes sense. But when you look at the fact we have a ton of beloved samurai video games right now, it's because developers were serving an underrepresented segment of the gaming public, and actually made some big budget titles that also appealed to normies. With the dedicated audience buying in along with the normies, you just created success after success, which down the line is going to mean more samurai video games, but this time from smaller developers. With the smaller developers likely to focus on more niche experiences targeted at a very hardcore and dedicated audience. Also, when you consider these games are power fantasies and they're open world, it really gives the player the feeling they are living the lives of these samurai. And that becomes a pretty cool feeling when it's done well. Which brings me on to my next point. When you explore the action-adventure genre of game, you soon realize they're all power fantasies in their own ways. However, for the most part, they all do look and play the same, since they all go for a cinematic presentation and give you an over-the-shoulder perspective. Some of them will be more tech-focused, such as the Spider-Man games, others will be more focused on the gunplay, and others still will be simple hack-and-slash affairs with rather shallow combat. This is where these various samurai games have a massive leg up. They actually have rather deep gameplay systems, meaning they offer something your standard action-adventure game doesn't, since most of them work on a simple premise of one or two buttons, which devolves into mindless button bashing. When it comes to game design, there is a fine balance between accessibility for less skilled players and offering a lot of depth for people who are more invested. To date, games like Ghost of Tsushima, Rise of the Ronin, Nioh, or even Sekiro Shadows Die Twice have pretty much found the right balance, as there are systems one has to consider when playing these games, and how they interact with other game mechanics. This isn't like the Assassin's Creed games, where it's actually a case of press button repeatedly and win. When you consider these games are offering depth while also giving a different flavor to the overall formula, and you can kind of see why they're starting to take off in a big way. This is something that's also worth discussing. Will these just be a flash in the pan because they're offering the right thing at the right time, or are they here to stay? Under normal circumstances, these games would just be a flavor of the month and disappear rather quickly. However, gaming and media as a whole is now at a more fractured stage, and while things do enter the zeitgeist and become huge, as a whole, things have a finite point where they just can't grow further. This bears out when you look at the overall sales for most video games. While they are super profitable, there are very few games that sell the insane numbers a title might do back in the day on the PS1, 2, or 3. This is because the consumer has more or less found the style of game they happen to love, and they more or less stick to that. Whereas back in the day, gamers were kind of forced to play a little bit of everything. Otherwise, they'd be left out of the discussion with their friend groups. Whereas nowadays, tribalism is more of a thing. Since everyone games, so everyone is more catered to. Now that samurai-based video games are well and truly established as being viable, they aren't going to go away. They will, however, fade more into the background, except for times when a big company like Sucker Punch makes a new game of this style. So yes, to some degree they are going to end up being a flash in the pan. Though they won't be like platformers were in the 90s, where they were the hot thing, got oversaturated, then disappeared effectively overnight. They'll have a few very high-profile releases, cool off, hang around, and then have another big release and be the talk of the town again. So do you have a favorite samurai-centric video game? Let me know in the comments, and maybe check out my video discussing what's next for Sucker Punch. But until next time, keep blazing that trail.